They had been told America was weak, a land of lazy merchants ruled by greed and chaos. But as the train rolled through the heart of Texas, they saw something that made their stomachs sink. Factories larger than entire German towns, endless highways, rows of cars gleaming under the sun, fields of food stretching farther than the eye could see. For these German soldiers, captured and shipped across the ocean, this wasn't just defeat, it was revelation. Because in those moments, they realized the terrifying truth. Germany could never have won. This is the story of how thousands of Nazi soldiers lost faith in everything they believed, not through bullets, but by witnessing the true power of freedom. They marched beneath a scorched sky in Tunisia. The stench of sweat, sand and gunfire clung to their uniforms. Unteroffizier Karl Ritter, hardened, helmet askew, had believed in the inevitability of victory. The German voice on the radio told him the enemy was crumbling. He had bannerished doubt. Then came the shelling, the explosion, the sudden flurry of light and smoke. He looked up to see Yanks descending with MP armbands. He raised his hands, the moment of capture. They expected to be stripped, humiliated, shot. Instead, they were given water, medics dressed their wounds, and an American guard offered a cigarette. Confusion flickered on Karl's face. "You're prisoners," he said through cracked lips. The guard only nodded. A few days later, Karl and dozens of others were crammed into ships, bound for an unknown land. The sea rolled violently. The smells of oil, salt, and diesel enveloped them. At night, Karl lay awake, listening to waves lash against the hull, hearts pounding in the dark. He thought, "What kind of power sends me to a land I have never seen?" Over weeks they crossed the ocean. Storms battered the deck. Some men bunked in dim holds, others on open deck, staring at constellations unfamiliar to them. The American officers maintaining order greeted them curtly, but with a calm civility. No shouts, no brutality, only firm control. Karl, in a corner below deck, thought of home, the cities he left, the speeches he believed, the banners of the Reich, and he wondered, why is this not hell? When the ship docked at New Orleans, he felt an electric jolt. The air smelled different. He looked out across the levees, the docks, the hulking cranes. He felt disoriented, unmoored in a place he had never imagined. They transferred to a train, bound inland toward camps. The tracks rattled beneath, the iron wheels pounding a rhythm that felt like a heart. German voices whispered, "Where are we going? Is this trap?" But no trap came, just the metal and the rails taking them deeper into America. They passed towns. First small farming communities, wooden porches, children waving at the passing train, neat lawns, American flags fluttering. Then bigger towns, stores with glass windows full of goods, cars parked in front, women shopping, men strolling. Their jaws tightened. Karl's comrade, Feldwebel Heinz Müller, pressed his face to the window and whispered, "Das ist kein Chaos." This is not chaos. As the train penetrated the Midwest, the scale grew vast. Endless fields of corn and wheat, silos rising like towers. The rails cut straight lines into the distance. They entered regions threaded with electrical wires, telephone poles, signs advertising Coca-Cola and "Caution Speed Limit." The German soldiers, once taught that America was a decadent mess of poverty and moral rot, now saw towns brimming with material abundance. They arrived near Detroit. Upon approach, smokestacks loomed. A massive plant churned, assembly lines stretching farther than eyes could see. Robots, cranes, human workers in sync. The whine of machines, the hiss of steam, the roar of presses. It was a symphony of production. Heinz could not contain a whisper. If this is weakness, then what is strength? On the way to a POW camp, they passed dozens of freight yards, locomotives, endless trains loaded with goods, warehouses full of crates. In one station, they saw a supermarket, walls of glass windows displaying fruit, meats, canned goods. For sale. Food everywhere. Carl watched a man push a cart loaded with groceries. He saw packaged goods in bright wrappers he'd never seen. Why were we starving back home? In camp, the prisoners expected barracks of misery, but instead found fields to work, simple but clean dormitories, medical care and full meals. They were given tools, assignment cards, regulated schedules. Some Americans even wrote letters back home about fairness toward the German POWs, a truth that contrasted with Hitler's promises of brutal domination. Karl's internal monologue, they said we would be tortured, reduced, humiliated. Yet here we are, orderly, human, fed. At night, under bunks or in whispered corners, they exchanged stunned comments. They told us we'd see chaos, but look at that town, no rubble, no hunger. Others argued back, maybe these are just showpieces, maybe propaganda has misled us. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The weeks passed. Karl lay in his bunk, restless. His mind churned like a storm. He recalled the rallies, the speeches, the radio broadcasts painting America as a decadent whore of capitalism. How had he believed it? How had every lie fit so neatly? One evening, he found a piece of scrap paper in his pocket and dipped his pen into ink. He wrote, "I have seen the enemy's land. It is vast, clean, organized, and free. We were told they were slaves to capitalism, yet they live better than kings. What have we done?" He hid the note under his mattress. Across bunks, other soldiers whispered similar thoughts. One, Obergefreiter Franz, said, "I remember the films, America eating itself, starving, hopeless. Now I see they have more steel than we ever built. How can I believe what I was taught?" Weaving flashbacks, the narrator describes clips and images from Nazi propaganda, the degenerate West, racial fear-mongering, claims of racial purity. Then the narrator juxtaposes those with present-day scenes of integrated workforces, though imperfect. Neighborhoods with mixed populations, children playing freely. Karl's conflict deepens. He recalls his own father telling him to have blind faith in the Führer. Now, he wonders if his father was deceived. He asks in his private diary, "If the lie is so big, who am I?" At the camp, one prisoner, bedridden with illness, is treated with kindness by an American nurse. Karl sees the guard leave a chair by the bedside. The man's eyes flicker with gratitude. Karl asks the guard, "Why help him?" The guard says quietly, "Human dignity doesn't belong to sides." Karl stares. One day, during work detail, Karl sees a local black American labourer in the field. He had heard the Nazi line, that black people are inferior, agents of chaos. Yet here, the labourer moves steadily under the sun, back straight, hands calloused, dignity in his work. Karl's heart lashes in his chest. Inside, he recognises the cracks. He hears other prisoners saying, "We were told we fight for the future." But this is the future we never knew. Humiliation, shame, wonder swirl in his mind. Silence becomes a motif. In the mess hall, conversation dies. In the barracks, nights are sleepless. Dreams tear at them, memories of comrades dying for illusions. He writes again, "I believed the fury of war would purify us, make us strong. But now I wake to see we were weak because we were blind. I do not know what I believe anymore." This is the emotional nadir. The men are lost, ideologically homeless. Their pride shattered, their identity trembles. In spring, rains battered fields. One night, a violent storm tore a barn roof on a nearby farm. The American farmers wanted help. The camp commander asked for volunteers. A few German POWs, including Karl, were chosen. Karl grabbed a hammer, nails, boards. They arrived at the barn at dawn, rain still dripping. American farmers worked alongside them. The farmer, Mr. Johnson, approached Carl, extended his hand. He said quietly, "We're rebuilding. Would you help, friend?" Carl stared, stunned at the word friend. He shook his hand. As they worked side by side in the mud, sharing tools, the distinction of enemy faded. The farmer offered them water, cold towels, midday sandwiches. Carl tasted tomatoes he'd never known, vibrant in flavour, fresh in colour. He looked across and saw his comrades smiling, laughing at small jokes with the farmers. The barriers cracked. One Saturday, the local church invited POWs to a church service. Some, including Carl, attended out of curiosity. They entered pews, heard hymns, saw families. The congregation sang in English. The Germans hummed along quietly, learning the melodies. No one forced them. No one proselytized. Afterward, a woman handed Carl a piece of apple pie and said, "You're welcome here?" Carl accepted without knowing how to reply, only bowing his head. One evening, Carl matched work in the fields with an American guard named Mills, who quietly spoke to him. "I fought because of hate, but once you're here, you're just a man in my charge." Carl nodded, tears prickling. He glimpsed within himself the capacity for empathy. As months passed, prisoners formed small circles. They shared stories of home, of families, of dreams they once believed. They asked, "Who is the enemy?" They confessed fear, confusion, grief. Some even wrote letters to American families, expressing gratitude, bewilderment, sorrow. Carl realized he was not the ideological colossus he believed. He was a man among men, capable of error, of hope, of change. The war ended in Europe. News came, Germany had fallen. Some prisoners of war wept, others remained silent. Carl and many comrades were repatriated. They boarded trains heading back to a Germany in ruins, cities flattened, populations starving, morale broken. Carl stood at a window as they rolled through Berlin's skeleton, hollow ruins where once grand boulevards had stood. He thought, "This is what remains of my world." He remembered America, its factories, its towns, its people who had treated him with decency. Back home, he found a shattered landscape and a soul forever altered. He met old friends who still believed Hitler's myths. He could not speak the truth they would not hear. In his private diary years later, he wrote, "I came back a prisoner, but what I brought is beyond chains. I bring the memory of what I saw, the vastness of a land built on freedom and respect. I could never return to lies in later life. Some returned POWs became advocates for democracy, for rebuilding a new Germany, for refusing lies even when convenient. Their voices often quiet, their influence subtle. The narrator closes, they came as prisoners of war, but left as witnesses of freedom. In their silence, they carried the memory of what true power meant, not force or domination, but openness, dignity, human connection. That memory lives beyond them, a warning that a nation built on lies can never sustain belief, but a people who see truth can never return to illusion.